On my first morning in the building, I felt like I had stepped into someone else's life. The office was too white, too bright, too quiet, like a hospital that sold spreadsheets instead of medicine. My heels clicked across the tiled floor, echoing through the open space, and I tried to steady my breathing. New job, new team, new chance to prove myself. I kept reminding myself of that as I found the aisle marked with a taped label reading Marketing Strategy. My department. My fresh start. I turned the corner and halted so abruptly a passing intern nearly collided with me. There, right in the middle of my new desk, sat a ficus plant. Not a small one either. Its branches stretched upward like it was trying to flee the fluorescent lights. A glossy, overwatered monstrosity, too big for the corner of the desk, and definitely too big for my morning mood. I blinked. Once. Twice. Had someone left it here by mistake? Before I could touch it, a voice behind me said, in a tone dripping with amusement, "We were hoping for something with more ambiance." I turned around slowly. The man approaching me was unmistakably the boss. Polished shoes, perfect hair, and the kind of smirk that suggested he practiced it in the mirror. Mr. Carter. I had only seen him in pictures during onboarding, but his expression was exactly as I imagined. The smile of someone convinced the world adored him. He gestured proudly toward the intruder on my desk. "Well, Amina," he said, stretching my name like it was an exotic dish he wanted to taste. "We figured you'd like something tropical to make you feel at home. A palm tree would have been perfect for you, but hey, no palms in stock, so we grabbed a ficus. Close enough, right?" My throat tightened. Close enough to what, exactly? I forced a smile so brittle it could have snapped in half. "Right. Very thoughtful." His grin widened, like he'd just solved world peace using office supplies. "I knew you'd appreciate it. You people always like a touch of green." You people. The words slid into my chest like a cold blade, but I swallowed every response. Every instinct to say, "What do you mean, you people?" This was my first day. I couldn't start a fire before I even knew where the exits were. As he walked away, I dragged the plant aside so I could sit. The soil stained the sleeve of my blazer. Perfect. I brushed it off, trying to ignore the irritation burning under my skin. A ficus. Not chosen because I liked plants. Not chosen because I asked for decor. Chosen because, in Mr. Carter's mind, I fit some pre-written story. The tropical girl. The palm tree-loving island woman. The one who'd walk into the office barefoot if HR didn't stop her. Never mind that I wasn't from an island at all. Never mind that Johannesburg had more skyscrapers than beaches. Never mind that the last thing I wanted was a plant staring at me like a symbol of assumptions I never agreed to carry. I tried to focus on setting up my computer, but every time I glanced at the ficus, annoyance prickled up my spine. It felt like an introduction I didn't authorize, like a stranger shaking my hand but holding on too long. My new colleagues trickled in one by one. Some offered tentative smiles, some welcomed me softly, but all their eyes flicked to the plant before flicking back to me. I wondered what they saw. Curiosity, confusion, or something else. Something closer to recognition, as if they'd all learned not to question Mr. Carter's jokes. By noon, I had already noticed patterns. People avoided challenging him. Conversations shut down when he entered a room. Their laughter around him was always a little too quick, too forced, and yet they all acted like this was normal, expected. I, apparently, was just the next person slotted into whatever category he found amusing today. When I left for lunch, the ficus loomed over my keyboard like a smug reminder. I couldn't shake the feeling that the plant wasn't really the joke. I was. Or at least, He thought I was. Walking down the hallway, trying to clear my thoughts, I heard Mr. Carter's voice from his office. The door was open just enough. "Did you see her face?" he said, chuckling. "She didn't know what to do with it. Honestly, it's adorable. I told you the ficus would work." A few muffled laughs followed. Heat rushed up my neck. Adorable. Like I was a child receiving a balloon. I stepped away before they noticed me, my hands trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. This wasn't banter. This wasn't friendly teasing. This was a man who had already decided who I was long before I opened my mouth, a caricature he drew himself. But I told myself to breathe, to stay calm. This was just day one. Maybe this was his awkward attempt at humor. Maybe it would stop. Maybe... No, I didn't believe that. Not really. When I returned to my desk, the ficus greeted me like an uninvited coworker. I sat down and typed a message to myself, a private note I didn't expect to ever use. Day one. Uncomfortable comment about tropical and you people. Plant placed on desk without my request. It was nothing. Just a way to vent. Just a harmless note. But as I hit save and minimized the window, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet alarm. A whisper that something was wrong here. Very wrong. And that the ficus was only the beginning. I didn't know it yet, but that plant would become the symbol of everything that followed. The first small root of a much larger problem. The first hint that I wasn't just stepping into a new job. I was stepping into a storm. I tried to convince myself that the ficus incident was just a bad attempt at humor, a clumsy start, a misread moment. I told myself this during my commute, during breakfast, even while brushing my teeth the next morning. New job nerves could distort anything, right? Maybe I overreacted. Maybe he wasn't that bad. But by the end of my second week, I knew the truth. Mr. Carter didn't accidentally cross lines. He danced on them. The first real shift came at the Monday meeting. I had just finished presenting my overview of the upcoming campaign, clean slides, tight logic, a strategy I'd worked 3 late nights on. People nodded, took notes. A couple smiled. I felt that flicker of pride you get when you know you delivered something solid. Then his voice cut through the room. "Well," he said, leaning back in his chair like he was about to announce a weather forecast. "Some people need a few days in the sun to get this warm, but Amina here, she was born ready." A few colleagues let out that nervous laugh people make when they don't want to participate, but don't want to look unfriendly. One woman stared so hard at her notepad, I wondered if she was trying to teleport into it. My stomach tightened. Born ready? Warm? The implication hung in the air like humidity. The moment passed, but its sting didn't. Later that same day, I walked by the break room and heard him again. "Turn down the AC, will you? Our girl Amina's warm enough on her own." He said it like he was doing me a favor, like turning my skin into a punchline was part of my benefits package. Someone mumbled, "Not cool, Mark." He ignored it. I stood there, hidden by the door frame. I should have walked in, should have said something, should have looked him in the eyes and told him to stop talking about me like I was a climate condition, but I didn't, because the team was still new to me, because the HR welcome packet had a section titled "Maintaining a Positive Work Environment" that suddenly felt like a joke, because I didn't want to be that employee on week 2. So I breathed through it, swallowed it, let it settle into the space beneath my ribs where unwanted words build small, sharp altars. The poison wasn't lethal at first, just acidic enough to burn. But small burns accumulate. On Wednesday, he walked past my desk and tapped the ficus with the back of his knuckle. "Someone's plant is thriving," he said loudly. Must be all that natural sunlight in her genes. In her genes, like melanin was a mood lamp. I gave him a polite smile, the kind that required effort, then turned back to my monitor. My jaw ached from how tightly I clenched it. At lunch, I sat with Maya from design, quiet, observant, the kind of person who notices everything and comments on nothing unless she trusts you. She watched me push salad around my plate and finally said, "You know, if he crosses a line, you can say something. People have tried before." My fork paused midair. "Tried?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "He's been like this since before I started. Some people report him, some avoid him, some laugh along. But he always finds someone new to target. You just fit whatever narrative he's looking for this month." A wave of cold rolled through me. I had hoped it was just me misunderstanding him, that maybe I was too sensitive, that maybe the plant, the jokes, the tone, maybe they didn't mean what they clearly meant. But hearing her confirm it was like watching a warning label appear on fogged glass. He does this. He chooses people. Now he's chosen you. When I returned to my desk, he walked by, hands in pockets, whistling. He stopped, leaned over the ficus and said, "Your little island buddy's looking lively. Reminds me of you. I bet you never even get cold." That was the first moment I truly understood what was happening. It wasn't misunderstanding. It wasn't awkwardness. It wasn't humor. It was entitlement. It was ownership of the narrative. It was him deciding who I was before I had the chance to introduce myself. The jokes weren't jokes. They were labels, and labels, once stuck, become cages. I wrote another note to myself that evening, not for HR, not yet, just for my own sanity. Week 2, repeated comments about my skin, warmth, genes. Team uncomfortable, pattern emerging. That was the moment, the quiet, internal moment, when the poison stopped tasting like surprise and started tasting like recognition. Because the first taste of poison isn't the worst one. It's the one that tells you more is coming. By the 3rd week, the ficus had become a character in my daily life, a silent witness, a leafy insult. I started to resent the way its glossy leaves caught the fluorescent light, as if it were proud of its assigned spot on my desk. Every morning I'd walk in, see it there, and feel that same small twist of irritation in my chest. Not because I hated plants, but because I hadn't chosen it. Because he had. It was a symbol, one I didn't ask for, didn't want, and couldn't avoid. People tried to be polite about it. "Oh, nice plant. It really brightens your area. Wow, looks healthy." I would force a smile and say, "Yeah, it's fine." But inside, the answer was always the same. It's not fine. It's not mine. It's not innocent. The ficus wasn't decor. It was a reminder. Every time Mr. Carter walked past my desk, he touched it. Not a gentle gardener touch. No, more like he was patting a dog on the head. A quick tap-tap on a leaf or a flick at its pot, like checking if it was still alive. Like checking if I was still playing along. One morning, he stopped by with his coffee and said loudly enough for nearby desks to hear, "How's the island plant doing? Making you feel at home, Amina?" He said it with that same smirk. Half amusement, half challenge. He wanted me to react. He wanted a laugh from the room. He wanted to push me a bit further into whatever stereotype he'd carved out of thin air. I didn't give him the satisfaction. "It's a ficus," I said, "not an island plant." He blinked. "Well, sure, but you know what I mean. Tropical vibes, bright leaves, sunshine energy." My jaw tightened. "I'm from Johannesburg," I said. "City, skyscrapers, traffic. Not exactly a tropical postcard." For a moment, the edges of his smile faltered. He didn't like being corrected. Not by me, not by anyone. He coughed, adjusting his tie. Well, he said, tone sharpening just enough for me to notice. A little greenery never hurt anyone. Then he walked away, pretending he'd said nothing wrong. I looked at the ficus sitting smugly in its pot. A normal plant. A harmless plant. But in this office, on this desk, it wasn't harmless at all. It whispered a message every time I glanced at it. He thinks he knows you. He thinks he decides who you are. He thinks you fit into a story he wrote. My irritation became a kind of buzzing under my skin. Constant. Low. Exhausting. Colleagues saw it too. At least the ones who paid attention. Maya from design gave me a sympathetic look one afternoon. Liam from analytics rolled his eyes behind Carter's back whenever a comment was made. A few people avoided getting involved completely, walking wide arcs around the tension. But no one said anything. No one told him to stop. No one challenged him. And I understood why. He was their manager, their performance reviewer, their gatekeeper to raises and promotions. People survived by silence. One day, during a brainstorming session, I noticed something subtle. Every time I spoke, Carter's expression tightened. Barely, but noticeably. Like my confidence was a private insult to him. Like my skill didn't match the caricature he'd already created. When the meeting ended, I lingered behind to pack up. Carter approached me, leaning one hand on the conference table. "You know," he said casually, "I hope the work here isn't too boring for you." I paused. "Why would it be?" He gave me the kind of smile people give when they're pretending to compliment you while actually slapping you across the face. "Well, with that exotic look," he said, voice lowering, "I just imagine you prefer excitement, adventure, color." I stared at him. For a moment, I didn't trust myself to speak. Before I could respond, someone walked in, and Carter straightened, clapping his hands as if nothing happened. I walked out of the room thinking one clear thought. He doesn't see me. He only sees what he wants me to be. That night, I started documenting everything. Not because I planned to report him, not because I had some strategy, but because I needed evidence for myself, to remind me that I wasn't imagining it, that the discomfort wasn't a story I invented. A pattern was forming, a deliberate one, layered, persistent, escalating. And the ficus, sitting in the center of my workspace, growing quietly in its oversized pot, was becoming more than a plant. It was a symbol of something I could no longer ignore. A symbol of the fact that, in this office, I wasn't seen as a Minandlovu, strategist, professional, new hire. I was seen as something else entirely. Something he created, something he controlled. And every passing day, one truth pressed harder and harder into my mind. Things were only going to get worse. I didn't plan on speaking up that day. In fact, I walked into the team meeting determined to stay quiet, stay focused, stay invisible. My plan was simple. Do the work, keep my head down, wait for the storm to pass. But storms don't pass when the one causing them enjoys the thunder. The conference room was crowded. 12 chairs, one too bright overhead light, and the lingering smell of someone's burnt toast from the kitchen down the hall. Everyone settled in. Laptops open, pens ready. The usual nervous shuffle before Carter arrived. He walked in late, as always, like the world paused for him. He clapped his hands dramatically and took the seat at the head of the table. "All right, team," he said. "Let's keep this one productive, or at least entertaining." A couple forced laughs. The meeting began. We were halfway through reviewing the quarterly projections when he suddenly snapped his fingers. "Oh, almost forgot. Let's have our sunny girl handle the market report. She's got tropical energy today." He said it lightly, casually, like it was a nickname, like it was cute. But the room fell silent. That awful, heavy silence where everyone hears the wrongness but waits to see what you will do. My heart pounded. I stared down at my laptop screen, blood rushing in my ears. Normally, this was the moment I'd swallow everything, force a smile, pretend it didn't bother me. But something broke. Or maybe something finally hardened. I felt my chair scrape softly against the floor as I lifted my head. For the first time, I looked directly at him. Not the floor, not the ficus, not the wall. Him. "My name is Amina," I said. Calm, steady, not loud, but impossible to ignore. "And my work is based on skill, not sunny energy." Time froze. A few jaws dropped. Someone coughed. Maya looked at her hands, eyes wide. Liam's eyebrows shot up so fast he nearly lost one. But the most interesting reaction was Carter's. His smile didn't fall. It twitched. Just slightly. A tiny crack in the mask. The look of a man who had expected compliance and instead got a mirror held up to him. He cleared his throat. "Well, I was just joking," I finished for him. "Yes, I know. You always are." I held his gaze. He broke it first. "Right," he said, forcing a chuckle. "Just keeping the mood light." No one laughed with him. He turned back to the agenda, but the shift in the room was unmistakable. People avoided eye contact, unsure whether to pretend nothing happened or to silently applaud. Meanwhile, I sat perfectly still, pulse racing, hands clasped tightly under the table so no one could see them shake. For the rest of the meeting, he didn't look at me. Not once. Afterward, people filed out quickly, escaping the tension. But Maya lingered. Once the room emptied, she leaned close and whispered, "You did the right thing." I wanted to believe her, but as I left, I felt eyes on me. The eyes of a man who'd been embarrassed, corrected, challenged. People like Carter don't forget small rebellions. They don't forgive them either. Later that afternoon, he passed behind my desk without saying a word. No comments about the ficus, no tropical vibes, no smirks, just silence. It wasn't relief I felt. It was warning. That silence wasn't an apology. It was a retreat to reload. That night, I lay in bed replaying the moment over and over. My voice steady. The room breathless. His face tight with irritation. Part of me felt proud. Part of me felt terrified. Speaking up had felt like stepping off a ledge. Now I had no idea how far the drop was, but one thought lingered, repeating like a mantra. He finally knows I'm not afraid of him. And that is exactly what he hates. The days after the meeting felt strange. Like the calm after someone slams a door, not the calm after a storm. Temporary, artificial, waiting. For almost a week, Carter avoided saying anything remotely sunny, tropical, or island-flavored. He walked past my desk without tapping the ficus. He didn't mention my energy. He didn't even smirk. But men like him don't drop habits. They mutate them. The first shift came in the form of scrutiny. Before, he barely looked at my work. He just enjoyed making jokes about me in the process. But once I pushed back, he started hovering, reading every line of my reports, questioning decisions he'd never cared about before, looking for cracks. And when he didn't find cracks, he tried to make them. He said, sliding one of my proposal drafts across the table. "This is bold. Are you sure this approach isn't a little too ambitious?" I kept my voice level. "It's data-backed, and the analytics team supports it." He tapped his fingers. "Right. Still, ambition doesn't always equal good judgment." He said judgment like he meant you don't know your place. But then the strangest thing happened. Every time he tried to undermine my work, someone else, usually someone from another team, would compliment it. "Great pitch, Amina. Your segmentation model was spot on. Honestly, your deck saved that meeting." And each compliment tightened something in him, a muscle in his jaw, a tense exhale, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He hated it, hated that I was good at my job, hated that I wasn't crumbling under his jokes, hated that people saw me, really saw me, and didn't reduce me to his caricature. The better I worked, the more he tried to put me back into the box he built. One morning, I came in early, as usual, and found him already there, standing by my desk like a sculpture carved from smugness. He held a cup of coffee and that familiar look that meant something unpleasant was coming. "You're in early," he said. "Back home you guys get up at sunrise, right? Explains why you're always the first one here." There it was, a new version of the same garbage. "I'm here early," I said, "because I have work to do." He chuckled. "Oh, come on. Don't be so serious. I'm just admiring the culture. You know, hardworking, early risers, all that." "My culture doesn't need your admiration," I said quietly. His smile twitched. "Touchy today, aren't we?" "I'm just correcting a misconception." "Right," he said. "Of course." He walked away, but I could feel the shift. He had moved past tropical girl and into something more insidious, something sharper, targeted. The jokes were becoming less ha-ha and more just to remind you who I think you are. That's when I started documenting everything properly. Dates, times, exact phrases. I kept the notes organized, thorough, clinical, because I wasn't imagining things anymore. I wasn't overreacting. The pattern was real, and it was growing. I didn't tell anyone, not even Maya. Not yet, because part of me still hoped it would stop, that he would get bored, that I wouldn't have to become that employee, the one who reports the boss after only a month. But as the days passed, the escalation became impossible to ignore. One afternoon, we were working on a cross-department project. I delivered the final performance metrics early, clean, error-free, neatly visualized. When Carter reviewed the results, he scrolled through them silently, lips pursed. After a full minute, he sighed dramatically. "You know," he said, not looking at me, with that exotic look, "I always imagined you'd be more creative, more flair, more unpredictability." I stared at him. "My work doesn't depend on my appearance." "Just saying," he shrugged. "I thought you'd bring something more vibrant." Vibrant. He used that word like it was a leash. I walked out of the meeting room that day with a realization pulsing through me. He didn't want me to succeed. He wanted me to stay in the role he built for me, colorful, compliant, and beneath him. And the more I shattered that role through competence, the more desperate he became to shove me back into it. He wasn't making jokes anymore. He was making statements, thinly veiled, sharpened by insecurity, wrapped in humor, but dipped in resentment. That evening, I sat at my desk long after everyone left, the office humming quietly around me. I stared at the ficus, the symbol he'd forced into my space, and for the first time, I didn't feel irritation. I felt clarity. This wasn't about a plant, or jokes, or misunderstandings. This was about power, control, and the fact that men like Carter crumble when women like me don't fit their script. I closed my laptop, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself, if he wants a fight, he's going to get one, but not on his terms. And from that moment on, the documentation wasn't just for me, it was preparation. Because the storm wasn't coming anymore. It was already here. The meeting that broke me didn't begin like a disaster. It started like any other. Too long, too warm, with too many people pretending they weren't exhausted. The conference room buzzed with the usual half-attentive chatter. Someone complained about the projector. Someone else scrolled through emails under the table. The kind of corporate background noise I used to tolerate without thinking. I took my seat near the middle, opened my laptop, and tried to steady my breathing. I had a presentation to give, one I'd spent days perfecting. Clean numbers, strong trends, visual clarity. The kind of work even Carter had never found flaws in. He arrived late, of course. He always did. He treated the room like a stage, and lateness was part of his entrance. When he pushed through the glass door, he was already mid-joke with someone from finance, laughing too loudly at his own punchline. People straightened automatically, the way you do when a storm front hits the room. He sat at the head of the table and tapped his pen twice. "All right, let's get this show started. And let's all give our little palm tree a round of applause. She saved the day with this latest performance report." The words didn't sink in at first. They hit my ears, then hovered, heavy, waiting to detonate. Palm tree. Little palm tree. He said it brightly, cheerfully, like a pet name, like a mascot, like I wasn't a professional presenting months of work, just a decorative object he'd plucked from a brochure of tropical destinations. The room went deadly quiet. Someone coughed. Someone else shifted uncomfortably. A chair creaked as someone slowly lowered themselves, trying not to draw attention. No one laughed, but no one stopped him either. My vision blurred for a second, a hot, sharp wave rising from my chest. I wasn't just angry. I wasn't even embarrassed. What I felt was something deeper, something hollowing. Humiliation. The kind that eats you from the inside out. It wasn't the first comment. It wasn't the worst one. But it was the one that arrived after weeks of warning signs and silent suffering. The one that landed on top of every other moment he reduced me to a caricature. And hearing the room react, hearing that painful, cowardly silence, triggered something in me I hadn't expected. Not tears, not panic, resolve, pure, clean, cold resolve. I closed my laptop slowly, methodically, as if I was shutting a door. I didn't say a word, didn't argue, didn't correct him this time. But he noticed the movement. He glanced at me, expecting a laugh or maybe a flinch. Instead, I looked him right in the eyes, and he faltered. Only for a second, but I saw it. That tiny spark of confusion. The moment he realized I wasn't absorbing this blow like the others. I wasn't shrinking. I was breaking. And breaking isn't the same as giving up. Breaking is the moment you stop bending. I presented my report without emotion. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I delivered the data like it was a script I had memorized years ago. When I finished, the room clapped politely. Carter didn't. He just gave a tight nod and said, "Good job, sunshine." Another hit. Quieter this time. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. I left the meeting as soon as it ended, ignoring the sympathetic looks trailing behind me. Maya tried to catch up, but I waved her off gently. I didn't want comfort. I didn't want apologies from people who hadn't defended me. I didn't want anyone's pity. I wanted change. I walked straight to my desk, shut my computer, grabbed my bag, and left the building. No excuses, no explanations. I walked out into the cool air and let the city noise wash over me. And in that moment, standing on the sidewalk, breathing like I hadn't breathed in weeks, I made the decision. This ends. Not tomorrow, not eventually. Now. That meeting wasn't a breaking point. It was a turning point. The moment I realized I wasn't surviving something small, I was surviving something systemic, something intentional, something I would no longer allow. I walked away from the office that day with a single, bright, unwavering thought. He will not get away with this. Not anymore. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. Not from anxiety, though there was plenty of that curled deep inside me, but from purpose. Clear, sharpened purpose. For the first time since joining the company, I didn't dread stepping into the office. I wasn't walking into another day of endurance. I was walking into preparation. The moment I reached my desk, I opened a blank folder on my computer and named it simply Carter, Documentation. There was no drama about it, no trembling hand, no fear. Just a calm, steady awareness that this was necessary, that if I didn't protect myself, no one else would. I spent hours gathering everything I could remember, everything I had written in my notes, every email that hinted at behavior, mine and his, words, dates, witnesses, little comments that on their own seemed harmless enough to dismiss. But together, they formed a pattern so clear it almost startled me. While typing, I paused more than once, realizing just how much I had normalized. How often I had laughed awkwardly, how often I had swallowed my discomfort to avoid trouble, how many times I'd smiled so people wouldn't think I was overreacting. It was almost embarrassing to see it all laid out. Almost. Because now it was evidence. By lunchtime, I had collected pages of it. And then I did something I'd been avoiding for weeks. I started talking to others. Not directly about myself. That would have been too abrupt. Instead, I asked small, careful questions. Has Carter ever made comments about you? What's it like working under him long term? Do you ever feel he crosses lines? People answered softly, like sharing a secret coated in shame. Oh, he jokes a lot. Sometimes too much. He used to call me kiddo. I hated it. He mocked my accent once. HR did nothing. He keeps a list of people he says have attitude issues. I think I'm on it. He told me I was too quiet for someone from my background. Still don't know what that means. Each story felt like a match struck in the dark. He wasn't just carelessly rude. He wasn't just old school. He wasn't even uniquely targeting me. He was a pattern, a system, a habit of harm, and suddenly everything fit. The awkward silences, the forced laughter, the way people avoided eye contact when he spoke to me, the way some colleagues looked relieved when his attention shifted to someone else. He had cycled through them all, and now he was cycling through me. When I came across Liam in the break room, he surprised me by speaking first. What he said to you in that meeting was out of line, he muttered, pouring his coffee too aggressively. It wasn't the first time either. I nodded, keeping my voice even. Does he do it often? He scoffed. Does he breathe? He made jokes about me being robotic for months. I guess everyone gets their turn. Well, I said, maybe it shouldn't be anyone's turn anymore. He lifted an eyebrow. You're thinking of doing something, aren't you? I'm collecting information, I said simply. He stared at me for a moment, realizing that I wasn't just venting. I was preparing. Then he nodded. If you ever need a statement, he said quietly, I'll back you. 1 ally, then 2, then 5. People who had been quiet for years began to open up once they saw someone else had finally hit their enough. It was both comforting and heartbreaking, how much people had endured, how long they had held their breath, how grateful they were to finally exhale. By the end of the day, I had spoken to 7 colleagues. 6 had stories. 5 had evidence. All had fear. Fear of retaliation. Fear of being labeled difficult. Fear of losing their jobs. But beneath the fear, something else flickered. Hope. Because someone had pushed back, and that someone was me. When I sat at my desk that evening, long after most people had left, I opened the documentation folder again and added a new section, witness accounts. Then I typed, one line at a time, an emerging truth. He chose me because he assumed I would stay silent. He underestimated me, and now he can't control the story anymore. The ficus on my desk rustled slightly, hit by the evening draft from the air vent. For the first time since it arrived, it didn't annoy me. It felt like a witness too. I closed the folder, sat back, and let out a breath I'd been holding for weeks. It wasn't fear anymore. It was momentum, because now I wasn't just reacting. I was preparing for the next step, the meeting, the confrontation, the moment when his jokes would finally cost him something. And when that day came, I knew exactly how ready I would be. I didn't sleep the night before I went to HR, not because I doubted myself, not because I was afraid of what they'd say, but because I knew, deep in that quiet place under the ribs where truth settles, that once I took this step, there would be no going back. No more pretending, no more hoping he'd stop, no more swallowing the poison. This would be war, and wars change everything. I arrived early, before the office smelled like coffee and stress, before Carter strutted in with his self-satisfied smirk. The HR office door was closed and the hallway silent. I stood there, folder in hand, heart pounding with something fiercer than fear. Resolve. When the HR manager, Ms. Patel, arrived, she stopped mid-step at the sight of me. "Amina, you're here early. I need to report something," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Now." Her eyebrows lifted, just slightly, but she nodded and unlocked the door. Inside, the room felt too bright, too still. A place where truth went to be weighed. "Tell me everything," she said as she closed the door behind us. And so I did. Not with anger, not with theatrics, not with the trembling of a victim. I spoke with the steady, deliberate precision of someone who had been pushed too far for too long. I gave dates, times, exact quotes, patterns of behavior. Her pen moved rapidly across the page. But when I handed her the folder, the emails, the notes, the witness accounts, the printed messages, she stopped writing entirely. "You gathered all this?" she asked quietly. "Yes." "And colleagues corroborated this?" "Yes." She exhaled slowly. "Amina, this is extremely serious." "I know." For a moment she didn't speak. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "Thank you for coming forward." We sat in silence for a beat, the kind of silence that fills a room before a fracture forms in the foundation. "I'll need to bring him in," she said. My pulse quickened. "Now?" "Yes. Right now." A strange calm settled over me. Not relief, not fear. Something cleaner. Anticipation. She stepped out to call him. I heard the buzz of the phone, the clipped, "We need to speak," and then footsteps, heavy, irritated, coming down the hall. When he entered the HR office, he brought a wave of arrogance with him, like a scent. "Patel, what's this about? I've got a meeting in 10... He froze when he saw me. "Oh." His voice flattened. "It's about her." Ms. Patel nodded slowly. "Please sit." He didn't. He crossed his arms instead, laughing under his breath. "Let me guess. She didn't like a joke. Honestly, you people are way too sensitive these days." "Don't," Ms. Patel said sharply. "Sit down." He blinked. She'd never spoken to him like that before. That alone told me everything I needed to know. He sat. Ms. Patel opened the folder. "This," she began calmly, "is a detailed record of your repeated inappropriate comments, targeting Amina specifically, along with corroborating testimony from several employees." His smirk twitched. His eyes darted toward me, quick, defensive, rattled. "Oh, come on," he scoffed, waving a hand. "You can't be serious. They're jokes, harmless. Everyone knows that. She's our tropical girl." "Stop," Ms. Patel said. He did, mid-sentence, mouth open. "Your remarks," she continued, "are not harmless. They are not jokes. They constitute harassment and discrimination. And the fact that you're standing here trying to minimize them only reinforces the severity of the situation." For the first time since I'd met him, Carter looked genuinely off balance, like the ground beneath him had shifted. "Look," he said, forcing a laugh that didn't land. "This is all being blown out of proportion. She's just sensitive. You know how they—" "Finish that sentence," Ms. Patel said coldly. He didn't. She turned to me. "Amina, you've shown immense courage. Thank you. We take this very seriously." Then she turned back to him. "We're opening a formal investigation. Effective immediately, you are suspended from managerial duties." The color drained from his face. "Suspended? Are you kidding me? Over a plant? A joke? This is political correctness gone." "Mr. Carter," she interrupted, voice now steel, "this isn't about a plant or a joke. This is about a sustained pattern of behavior, documented by multiple people, over years. Years." The word hung between us. He had done this before, to others, many others. But this time, someone had kept the receipts. He stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I won't stand for this." "You won't have to," she said, "because you're leaving the room." He stared at me then, not with humor, not with superiority, but with something darker. The look of a man realizing that control had slipped through his fingers, that the person he underestimated had become the person who ended him. I didn't flinch. Not this time. He left the room, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was clean. Ms. Patel exhaled. "You did the right thing, Amina. I know this wasn't easy." "It wasn't," I said quietly, "but it was necessary." And I meant every word, because in that office, with the glass walls and the two bright lights, something finally shifted. Not in him, in me. I walked out not as the girl he called tropical, or sunshine, or palm tree. I walked out as the woman who had finally forced him to face consequences. And for the first time since my first day, I felt lighter, freer, seen. This wasn't the end. It was the turning point. The moment the storm began to break. The office felt different the next morning. Not louder, not quieter, just altered. Like someone had shifted the gravity by a few degrees. When I walked in, people looked up, not with pity, not with discomfort, but with something else. Something almost like respect. A kind I hadn't seen before. Their eyes lingered just a little longer. Their nods held a little more weight. I didn't need their approval, but I understood the meaning behind it. Someone had finally done what they all wished someone would. Someone had finally said no more, and that someone was me. Carter's office door was the first thing I noticed. Closed. Dark. No morning lights. No booming laughter echoing down the hall. No forced jokes or smug comments drifting into the workspace. Just silence. It was almost unsettling how quickly a man's presence can vanish from a building he once tried to dominate. How fast the absence becomes louder than the noise ever was. By mid-morning, the rumors began swirling. He's been suspended. They're investigating everything. They were interviewing people all morning. I heard HR already spoke with half of finance. Apparently he's done this to a lot more people than we thought. But the rumor that hit the hardest the one whispered with the greatest relief, was, "He won't be back." I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. I had lived the pattern. I had documented the proof. I had heard enough fear-laced stories from coworkers to know the truth. This wasn't an isolated incident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't just how he is. This was a man who had finally run out of people willing to swallow his cruelty. Around noon, Ms. Patel approached my desk quietly. "Amina," she said, "do you have a minute?" My heart thudded, but I nodded and followed her to a small conference room. She closed the door behind us, then turned with a calm, composed expression. "I wanted to let you know," she began. "Carter has been removed from his managerial position, effective immediately." For a moment, I forgot to breathe. "It's not official yet," she continued, "but he will not be returning to this department. The evidence, combined with the additional testimonies we've gathered, was overwhelming." I felt a strange sensation wash over me, relief mixed with something else. Vindication? Justice? Or the quiet realization that I had survived something I never should have had to survive? Ms. Patel went on, "Until we appoint a new department lead, we need someone to oversee the projects temporarily. Someone who understands the work, the team, and the goals." I blinked. "You want me to—" "Yes," she said, offering a small, knowing smile. "You've essentially been keeping this department afloat already. Now it will simply be official." I didn't know what to say. Pride and disbelief tangled together inside me. "I know this isn't how you thought your first months here would go," she added, "but you've shown extraordinary strength and professionalism. You earned this." Earned. Not given, not assumed, not forced. Earned. I nodded slowly. "I'll do it." Her smile widened. "I thought you would." When I returned to my desk, a wave of murmurs rippled through the office. Liam walked over, hands in his pockets, trying to look casual but failing miserably. "So, temporary department lead?" He grinned. "Can I still complain about your spreadsheets?" I laughed. A real laugh, not the strained courtesy I'd been practicing for weeks. "Only if you complain quietly." He nudged my shoulder. "We're proud of you." Maya approached next, softer, but with eyes full of warmth. "We've all been waiting for this," she whispered, "for him to finally face consequences, for someone brave enough to speak." "I didn't feel brave," I admitted. "That's what bravery feels like," she said. The rest of the day passed in a haze of meetings, transitions, project updates. It wasn't until late afternoon, when the office was thinning out, that I walked by Carter's office again. The door was unlocked. Empty. A cleaning crew had already begun clearing the desk. The air felt noticeably lighter, as if the room itself had been holding its breath for years. The nameplate on the door, M. Carter, had been removed. A bare rectangle of adhesive residue remained. A symbolic emptiness. Names were changing. Roles were shifting. The power dynamics he had relied on were crumbling. And I stood at the threshold of a future he never imagined for me. A future he once tried to smother with stereotypes and jokes and palm tree narratives. But now I wasn't the tropical girl. I wasn't the target. I wasn't the punchline. I was the woman who took down the man everyone thought was untouchable. And as I turned away from that empty office, I felt something rise inside me. Steady, warm, undeniable. I belonged here. Not because he was gone, but because I had earned my place despite him, and the door with no name on it was proof. The morning I stepped into Carter's old office, it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like a reset. The room was bare, stripped clean of the man who once owned every inch of it with his ego. The desk was empty except for a closed laptop and a blank notepad. The window blinds were half open, letting in a soft, diffused light that made everything look new. No plants, no decorations, no symbols imposed by someone trying to define me before I ever spoke. Just space. Quiet. Honest space. Ms. Patel walked in beside me, holding a small box of office supplies. She set it on the desk and smiled. "We thought you should decide what belongs here," she said. "Not someone else." It was such a simple statement, but it hit deeper than any compliment I'd received these past months. Because this office wasn't just an empty room. It was the first place in this building that wasn't shaped by someone else's assumptions about me. I walked slowly around the desk, running my fingers along the clean surface. No fingerprints, no stains, no ficus-sized circles where something unwanted used to sit. Just wood. Smooth. Mine. I sat down in the chair, the same chair he used to sink into with smug authority, and I felt none of that. None of the heaviness. None of the poison. Only possibility. A knock tapped lightly on the open door. Maya peeked in, followed by Liam, both smiling in a way that wasn't forced or apologetic anymore. "Settling in?" Maya asked. "Trying to," I said, exhaling. Liam grinned. "Place looks better already. Might actually be safe to walk in here now without getting insulted." I laughed. The sound bounced off the walls, bright, unburdened. They came in and sat across from me, and for a moment the room filled with something it had never held before. Safety, respect, future. "Seriously," Maya said softly, "I know it was hard. Everything you went through, but you changed things. Not just for yourself. For all of us." I swallowed, not trusting myself to speak immediately, because I knew she was right. For years, Carter used jokes as shackles, assumptions as chains, humiliation as a form of control, and one pushback, my pushback, had snapped something in the entire system. They stayed a few minutes longer, talking about projects, the investigation, the transition. But when they left, I was alone again in the quiet office, and I realized I wasn't alone at all. Every voice that came forward, every whisper shared in hallways, every story that had been buried under years of fear, they were all here with me. This office wasn't empty. It was filled with the invisible strength of everyone who had endured him and everyone who refused to endure another Carter ever again. I stood and looked around one more time. Then I made a quiet decision. No palm trees, no ficus, no symbolic plants forced onto me. If something would grow in this office, it would grow because I chose it. Not because someone decided my ethnicity made me love tropical greenery. Not because someone wanted to make a joke at my expense. Not because someone assumed they knew my identity better than I did. I opened the laptop and typed my name on the digital nameplate. Amina Ndlovu, acting department lead. Seeing it there, official and unchallenged, filled me with a warmth no joke, no assumption, no stereotype could ever touch. I leaned back in the chair and smiled. No palm trees, no ficus, just me. Finally, fully, undeniably me. Amina Ndlovu. The woman who refused to be reduced. The woman who fought back. The woman who earned her place. And for the first time since stepping into this building, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. A new beginning, rooted in truth, grown by choice, and mine alone.